أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد والثناء لله رب العالمين باره الخلائق أجمعين الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل. أما بعد فقد قال الله تعالى في كتابه المجيد وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا تلقوا بأيديكم إلى التهلكة صلوا على محمد وآل محمد صل على محمد وآل Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. I would just ask all of you to bear with me. I didn't think I would get this exhausted after work. It's the first time I'm doing work and a majlis, so it's my first time and I'm not used to it. So there's a little bit of exhaustion in me, and I hope, inshallah, don't make any blunders. One of the interesting things that would blow my mind when I was studying in Qom was the discussion on meaning. Okay, meanings. Everywhere we look around, there is meaning that we find in these things. When we look around in this hall, we see people sitting here. We try and understand what is the meaning of all of this. Why are we sitting here? Why are we gathering here? For example, God forbid, if you go outside and there's an accident that happens on the road, two cars hit one another. It's an incident that happens outside, but all of a sudden you try to derive meaning from it. What happened over here? Why did this happen? What did this incident mean over here? And you realize that when you derive meaning, you come to certain conclusions. For example, you say, this incident that happened, it means that either maybe someone was drunk, maybe someone was on their phone, and hence they came into an accident. And then once you derive and come to a meaning, you then derive a conclusion. And you say, well, you know what? Because I have now learned the meaning of this incident is that when somebody does drunk driving, they're going to they're going to come into an accident. In my life, I'm going to implement this rule that I will not engage in this practice. And then governments come and they legislate law for this. They say it is impermissible to use your cell phone, for example, while driving. And the way they're able to come to this conclusion is because a certain incident happened, they understood some meaning from it, perhaps they had to see it a couple of times, and then they derive some conclusion. Now, this idea of deriving meaning and deriving conclusion is not just things that we look at over here in our day-to-day life. No, but even when you look at history and you look at, for example, the life of the Holy Prophet, life of the Imams alayhimus salam, what exactly are we doing? We're looking at their life and we're saying, okay, what did this mean? What did it mean when Imam Rida alayhi salam, for example, became the wazir? What did this action of his mean? What does it mean when Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam decides to take his women and children to Karbala? What does this mean? Why did he do this? What does it mean when Amir al-Mu'mineen, for example, does not do an uprising when the Khilafah is usurped? What does it mean? All of this has meaning. Once you figure out what the meaning is, then you try and apply it on your life. You say, you know what? I know this meant this, and now I can derive a conclusion from it and implement it on my life. But quite ironically, you would assume that while we do this with all the seerah of the Prophet and seerah of the Imam, actually that's what Islam is. Islam is a set of the Quran, the riwayat. You go and look at it, you look at what it means, and you apply it in your life. Common sense. It's not anything, I'm not saying anything complicated right now. But quite ironically, when we look at the story of Karbala, you will notice that actually the concept of deriving meaning is not so clear-cut. Okay, it was not so clear-cut. Because on the one hand, a question that would bother me while in Qom, and I'm not going to answer that tonight, because maybe I have not reached any conclusion. But the problem is, when an incident happens in the material world outside, for example, when an accident happens, how many meanings can you derive from that? Is it a limited set of meanings or an infinite sense of infinite meaning? In the material world, it's the realm of matter. Matter is limited. How many things could it possibly mean? But yet I see that every year scholars are coming and shedding new perspectives, new dimensions on Karbala. Is it supposed to end somewhere? If you say philosophically that a material incident can only have a limited number of meaning, well then it has to have an end. You cannot just keep deriving new meanings. And unfortunately, it seems sometimes we have come to this stage because we're in the era of postmodernism. It seems sometimes we're actually making up meanings about the incident of Karbala. We have started to make meanings. Perhaps there's a limit. I'm not saying there is. Perhaps there is. It's a philosophical question. We have to think about it. But before we even go into this discussion, there's a fundamental assumption we have to understand and come to a conclusion about for ourselves before we even come to this discussion. And that's what I want to discuss tonight. And that discussion is, does Karbala even have meaning for us? Huh? What kind of a blasphemous question is that? Well, what, I'm wasting my time here? Since Muharram, we're discussing the meaning of Karbala. What is the meaning of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam? Let me tell you that actually there are three approaches to the story of Karbala amongst our scholars I'm talking about, Shia. The predominant view up until the constitutional revolution of Iran, which was 1900s, was that Karbala has a meaning, but not for us. We cannot perceive the meaning of Karbala. We cannot perceive what Imam Hussein did and why he did it. Because the ayah in the Quran says, وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ. Don't throw yourself into destruction. Imam Hussein seems to have thrown himself into halakat. Why did he throw himself? He knew what's going to happen. Did he not know? He knew what was going to happen. So why is he going? And even worse, why is he taking his women and children? Does he not know they're going to become captives? Well, they knew. And our ulama had a difficult time trying to explain this. Sheikh Tusi, Sheikh Mufid, Alama Tabrisi, Sahib al-Jawahir, Mirza Jawad Tabrizi, all of these ulama, they're like, yeah, this is, the behavior of Imam Hussein is not matching with this ayah, so we have to give an explanation. And the explanation they gave is that this action of Imam al-Hussein was a specific responsibility for him, between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we don't know what it means. This is not abnormal in religion. For example, what does 2 rakat in Fajr mean? What does it mean? I don't know what it means. Allah said, do it, I'm doing it. What does 4 rakat in Zuhr mean? What does ruku mean? What does sajda mean? I don't know what any of this stuff means. If you know what ruku, can you explain to a non-Muslim? If he says, what are you doing? I'm bowing, what kind of a bow down is this? All the way down and just stand. Do you greet anyone like this? So you say, no, these are things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. There is a meaning. I'm not saying there's no meaning, but we don't know. These are the secrets. So religion is full of this. Not just that, there are also many things which are specific for the prophets and the imams, which we don't need to know about. Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa ali, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It was wajib on him to pray, for example, Salatul Layl. It is a responsibility for him. We understand that, okay, there was a responsibility. Do we derive any action for it from that information that we know? We don't derive any. It's not wajib on us. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam is asked to go slaughter Ismail alayhi salam. What does this mean? It's a responsibility that was for him. But till today we act on the symbolic ritual of slaughtering the sheep, for example, at Hajj. We're just doing it because Allah told us to do it. We have to submit. Likewise, this group is saying there is a meaning, but its meaning is between Imam Hussein and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't know what it means. And because we don't know what it means, you cannot derive any lessons from it. Practical lessons I'm talking about. This, brothers and sisters, actually was the famous view up until the constitutional revolution. Today, all of you are looking at me with blank faces that maybe never heard of this. And that's good, because I'm not going to discuss this today. I'm not going to critique this today, because it seems like everyone's like, nah, this just sounds wrong. But I don't want to belittle the view of these ulama. These were some pretty solid people over here. But we're going to just pretend like this doesn't exist today. But I wanted to mention this is also a view. It's a view. This view says, then what are we supposed to do? Well, just like the action of Ibrahim turned into a ritual of slaughtering, the action of Bibi Hajra turned into the action of Sa'i, likewise the event of Karbala turned into your manifestation of mourning. And if you look at the riwayat tradition, I don't think I have come across any narration where Imam Sadiq says, let me explain to you the political dimensions of why Imam Hussein did this uprising. I have not seen anything. It's like, no, you need to mourn, you need to weep, you need to cry, you need to go for ziyarah. There is this symbolic ritual that we have been taught. That's perfectly fine. Okay, so if you take this view, Karbala for you doesn't have any practical meaning anymore. You cannot derive. And that's why for 1,000 years, you do not see the way Karbala being used like it is today. Today, all of us use Karbala as a story of practice. We need to act. We need to follow Imam al-Hussein. You don't find this language for most of history. Okay, and there's other discussions on this, contextual and so on. Second view says, Karbala does have a meaning. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, no, it has a meaning. But this meaning is not rational. It is not something your aql can understand. It is a meaning that can only be understood through the heart, through love. It was an emotional movement of Imam al-Hussein. Why? Because he was an ashiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was a lover of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he desired so much to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he did what he did. He could have said, I'm not going to go towards Kufa. Muslim bin Aqil is killed. He's getting a letter saying Muslim is killed. And they're saying, you're not going to get the government. No, he still wants to go. Why are you going, Imam Hussein? You don't know they're going to betray you? No, he is so much in love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is an ashiq that he wants to go because of this reason. This is the second view, second approach. It exists. And the third view says, no, Karbala and every single action that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam takes in the story, if you look at the maqtal, he himself is giving you the rational reason for it. He himself is telling you why he's going. He himself is going to tell you why he's leaving Medina. He himself is going to tell you why he's leaving Mecca. He himself is going to tell you why I'm not giving bay'ah. So if he's telling you the reason, then that reason is something that is rational. It can be rationalized, it can be understood. And if it can be understood and universalized, then you can actually implement it in your life. These are the three approaches, okay? Let's analyze these now one-on-one. As I said, the first, because each of these approaches will result in different conclusions for you in your life. Any approach you take, it will result in a different conclusion because you will understand a different meaning from it. Remember that initial point about meaning. Meaning is what's going to make you act upon something. The approach you take will lead you to a different meaning. If it leads to a different meaning, then your life will be different. Very straightforward. The first meaning, okay, as I already said, that if you accept this meaning, then there is nothing that you can derive from it. They will say, don't follow the practice of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. As a matter of fact, all of your imams didn't do what Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam did. None of the imams did what he did. Even Imam Ali didn't do what Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam did. Even Imam Hassan did not do what Imam Hussein did. Even right after Imam Sajjad alayhi salam didn't do what Imam Hussein did, let alone the rest of the imams. So this is clear evidence that something very specific was here for Imam Hussein. And because it was specific, it does not mean anything for us today. So you cannot use this event to, for example, go out and make political chants and slogans and we should be doing this and we should be protesting and we should be, for example, following his footsteps. No, this is not an event you can take to derive rulings. This is not an event that you can take to derive any practical conclusions. You got to follow the rest of the imams who engage in behavior that is, you can derive meaning from it for your own life. This was, as I said, the view of many of the ulama in the past, okay? And the reason why they came to this view is because of the ayah that says, don't throw yourself into destruction. So they said, definitely there was something specific here for Imam Hussein, otherwise they could not reconcile it with this ayah. They could not reconcile it with this ayah, okay? The second view, also, we say we ignore the first view because it's not really well accepted anymore, even though there are ulama that accept it. Second view says that no, it is not a rational explanation, it is an explanation of love, okay? The problem when you say that it is solely a movement of love is that once again, it does not allow you to derive any responsibility for yourself. Why? Because who is a better lover of Allah, you or Imam Hussein alayhi salam? Who has more love, whose love has more intensity, yours or Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam's? Imam Hussein alayhi salam's. So he was motivated and pushed by this intense love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he did what he did. And only because of his personal experience that he had, was able to do what he did. You can never actually have that experience of Imam Hussein. You can never have that experience. So if you can never have that experience, you cannot take Imam Hussein's experience and universalize it. This is real. Your emotions, let's say my love for my wife, for example. Is there any way for me to say that my love for my wife is actually, the same as, your love for your wife? Can you calculate that? There's no way. There's no way to figure it out. How do you know? Maybe, Asan, there's nothing here for me to show you. It's such a personal and subjective experience to me, I cannot even make any comparisons. So you cannot do anything over here. So actually, it absolves you of any responsibility, but it can create some dangers for you. Because you may say, yes, Imam Hussein did this, but on the other hand, I'm also in love with Imam Hussein. So now I'm gonna live up to his memory in a way where I can show my personal love to him. And over here, you see, because it's an emotional discussion, sometimes you can engage in certain behavior which is not appropriate. Islam may say, don't behave this way. You may take certain decisions and actions which are, for example, not correct, or maybe they're silly. And there is no way for anyone to critique you. Why? Because you're in love. A boy or a girl, if they fall in love with one another, parents may say to the son or to the daughter, beta, beti, listen, I'm not used to this 21st century conventions that you guys have grown up with, but I'm 50, 60 years old, I definitely have some wisdom. And I can tell you that this person is not going to be a suitable match for you. The boy or the girl will say, I don't care. You know what? They may say, yes, I know these flaws exist, but I could care less. I'm in love with this person. And people exaggerate their love so much. They say, this is the most beloved person in the universe. Okay, when you become obsessed with someone, you stop seeing any flaws, and people may tell you this is not a good decision for you. But you are blinded by love. And that's the hadith, inshallah, I will quote. You become blinded. When you become blinded, you can take certain decisions which are not correct. So you have taken the emotions as your driving force. This is a problem, okay? The third view says that no. The movement of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is a movement of rationality and reasonability. Everything that he was doing was reasonable, rational. We can explain it. Not only can we explain it, but once we explain it, we're going to actually derive practical lessons for it for ourselves. Okay? We're going to derive practical lessons for it for ourselves. One of the most prominent scholars who pushed this idea is actually Imam Khomeini. The first, I would say, major scholar. There were some before him. The first major scholar to actually push this idea, to bring this discussion in his discussion of Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy al Munkar in his fiqh books, using Imam Hussein, using Karbala. Before that, you don't find it. Okay? So over here, as I said, we're going to ignore the first approach. We're going to focus on this, the second and the third. Because on the one hand, we don't want to say emotions are useless. Asan, the entire riwayat tradition tells us to cry and weep and mourn. What is this? This is emotions. What else is this? So we don't want to ignore that. But we must be able to determine the relationship between these two things, the emotions and the intellect. Let's look at a comparison first, okay? Look, in your life, you always need two sources. Okay, you need two sources. You need one source to tell you, it tells you what you need to do, okay? One source tells you what your responsibility is, and a second source is going to push you to fulfill that responsibility. You need two sources, guys, okay? One source tells you what I have to do. What do you have to do in this world? What do I have to do today? That's one thing. Second source is going to push you to actually do that thing. For example, all of us, mashallah, Maulanas, all of our lives, even since I've been growing up, have told us Salatul Layl is very important. And they have told us. A certain source tells us, source of knowledge tells us, this is something we have to do. This is something we should do. But there's one source that is missing, which is why we don't do it. Okay? We're going to try and figure out between the second and the third, which is the love and the intellect, which of these two fit over here. We say that the first source that tells you what you have to do is actually your intellect, not your emotions. Don't rely on your emotions to tell you what you have to do. Okay? Use your intellect to figure out what you have to do. Your aql. But once you have figured it out, you need now that emotion. Now you need that love. If you do not have love and that strong willpower and that strong emotional connection, that first source is then useless at that point. Okay? The love is going to be the force that will push you to pray Salatul Layl. If you love Salatul Layl, if you actually ended up, loving Salatul Layl, inshallah, Allah gives us all of that taste, how will we not wake up? Is it possible for us to not wake up at that time? It's not possible. Back in our days, we used to have like BlackBerry Messenger. A lot of us got married overseas. Wives are from, India, Pakistan, England, so on. And back then, BlackBerry Messenger was a big thing. And you would be up till 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, talking to your, fiance or spouse. Why? Because you're in love, and this time is their wake up, because the time clock is different. But you wake up. You won't wake up for Salatul Layl, you won't wake up for Fajr. Why? Because the love pushes you actually to do it. So we're not belittling the emotions. We're not belittling the love. We're saying love is there, emotions are there, but we need to figure out where does it fit in our life. Does it fit in the place where we use that as the main source for telling us what we need to do in life? And then discard the aql? Where's the role of the aql at that point? Okay, so this is something that we want to say over here. Okay, the aql is going to tell us, what is good and what is bad. And it will also tell us what we have to do and what we don't have to do. So there's two things. One thing, it will tell us this is good, this is bad. Then it will also tell us, do this, don't do this. So aql allows us to do this. It's called tashkhis. You're able to do tashkhis. You're able to identify. Then you need that love to come and tell you, okay, I've told you have to do this. Now come and do it. Now go and do it. Okay? Look at this narration from Nahjul Balagha, where Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali alayhi salam, says, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. He says, this phrase, blind love, it's here in Nahjul Balagha. You don't have to look at English. It's 1400 years ago. Man ashika shay'a a'ma basarahu. One who falls in ishq, his basar, his vision, his sight becomes blind. Becomes blinded. Okay? Wa amrada qalbahu. And his heart becomes diseased. Okay? فَهُوَ, now look at this. فَهُوَ يَنْظُرُ, he begins to look at the world بِعَيْنٍ غَيْرْ سَحِيهَا. Because he's using the emotion, the ishq, as the guiding to tell you what you have to do, what you shouldn't do. Even though that should be the thing that tells you what to do, pushes you to do the action. But Imam Ali is saying that when you become an ashik of something, and solely an ashik, and you ignore the aql, and you use that as the first source, you're going to become blind actually. And you will start looking at the world with an incorrect eye. Your eye is not functioning properly. وَيَسْمَعُ بِأُذْنٍ غَيْرْ سَمِيعًا. Aslan, your ears are hearing things that you want to hear. Okay? So once again, the example of your beloved, not just beloved, like anyone you like, if you're a fan of someone, you don't want to hear anything negative from them. Even when you hear negative, you just cancel it out. Why? Because you have this love. قَدْ خَرَقَتِ الشَّهْوَاتِ عَقْلَهُ. And for this individual, the aql, which was supposed to be the main source to identify what to do, what not to do, what is good, what is not good, this individual, their shahawat, their carnal desires have actually taken over their aql. So the equation is flipped. This itself shows us that actually this is not meant to be like this. The way it's meant to be is aql first, and the emotions have to be controlled. But they have to be there. Without it, you're still not going to do anything. Okay? وَأَمَاتَتِ الدُّنْيَا قَلْبَهُ. And the dunya has killed this person's heart. Okay, it's killed the person's heart. And he goes on and he goes on and he says, this person, وَلَا يَتَّعِذُ مِنْهُ بِوَاعِذٍ. All the mulanas, all the scholars, all the preachers, they can come and advise this person, don't do this, this is harmful for you, this is better for you. It has no impact on this person. And Amir al-Mu'mineen is actually talking about himself. He says, how much am I supposed to tell these people? Don't fall for the dunya, don't get greedy over the wealth. Don't fall in love with these things. Don't look at the world and make decisions based off of this love. وَلَا يَتَّعِذُ مِنْهُ بِوَاعِدٍ. They do not have any impact on them, no matter how much I keep telling them, don't do this. Okay? And so on. There's a whole, sermon over here that he says this. An example I can give for the younger audience is that consider you have a car. Okay? Most of us families have cars here. A car has a motor, okay? And it has, a steering wheel or the brakes. The relationship of the emotions and the intellect is like the motor and the steering wheel. The car is not going to move without the motor. Okay, you need the engine in it for the car to move, okay? But if it starts moving and you do not have a steering wheel to actually guide it around, or you don't have the brakes, it's going to come into an accident. You're going to eventually do something very harmful. So the aql is like the steering wheel. As a matter of fact, linguistically, the aql or iqal, that's actually what it meant. The harness by which they would control the camel. Okay, the harness, something that would, put it was like a cautionary thing. Make sure the camel doesn't end up running off or, hitting something. That's how the word aql came, the etymology of it. Okay, so over here is the same example. The car, when it's moving, so look, you need both at the end of the day. You need both, but the hierarchy has to be very clear. The hierarchy is that, look, you need the steering wheel to actually guide where this car is going to go. It's going to tell you where to go, where not to go, how to get there, and so on. The brakes are there. But then you need the motor as well. If you just have the steering wheel, and you can have the best steering wheel in the world, I don't know if you live in the Middle East, you have those covers on it that your hands don't burn. You have everything. Glitter on it and stickers on it, everything, but you don't have an engine. You can just show off your thing on Instagram or something, and people might like it. That's the most you're going to get. But the car is not going to move anywhere. Likewise, you can show your motor, okay, an engine, and I don't know anything about cars, by the way. I just never had any interest in it. Or whatever, now it's electric cars anyways, right? So those guys who don't have electric cars, the engine that is there, you can show it off on your, social media. The moment you sit on it, God forbid you don't have any steering wheels, up to, I cannot even give this example because apparently everything is like digitized or something, the GPS and all these examples are getting outdated very quickly, unfortunately. And I'm very slow because in Iran I didn't have these type of cars. I had those Prides. It's called a death wish. We call it a death wish. It's just a very plastic car. Alhamdulillah, the steering wheel was working and the motor got me everywhere around the city, inshallah. So this is the problem. If you make the motor the sole source of your knowledge, you're always going to be at risk. And you are so prone to being misguided at this point that your love for Imam Hussain can actually be very easily used and manipulated and utilized. And actually, that's what we see nowadays. Okay, every day or every year, some new fitna, some new movement, and so everybody is trying to justify it, in the name of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. No, let's have a rational discussion about this. Let's have a rational discussion about these topics. Why do you have to be so emotional? Emotion has to have its own place. You don't judge and make conclusions about your entire family, your entire community, just based off of some whims. It's based off of your own personal subjective experiences. You don't live life like this. It's not in Islam. Aslan, when you open Usul al-Kafi, if you open Bukhari, it says Kitab al-Tawheed. It starts with Tawheed. Our worldview does not start with Tawheed actually. It starts with Kitab al-Aql. Aql is the first thing. If you don't have aql, you will not have the ability to perceive ethics. You will not be humble enough to actually understand Tawheed. Aslan, that's a muqaddamah, the preliminaries, the very basic things of our worldview. Okay, this is worldview, this is mainstream. Nothing I'm saying is unorthodox. This is mainstream tashayyu belief. Try to understand these things. Okay? So people who are ignoring the aql, they have become prone to misguidance very easily. Because it's emotions. As Imam Ali says, they become blind. You can take them this way, you can take them that way, you can turn them into, pop stars and so on and so forth. And then sometimes they become misdaq, an example of the riwayat that say, don't turn our blood, as a source of your income. Many riwayat, don't turn our love, our basically blood, our message, our love, our blood, as a source of your career and so on and so forth. you can become a misdaq of that, because you can get misused by people. This is very, very, normal, unfortunately. So, if this is the case, if we say Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam's mission was also rational, it's not some secret between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we don't know and we're just going to look at it. No, if we say it is rational, then we need to come back to the drawing table and actually revisit everything again, because we need to give better answers for why Imam al-Hussein does not do an uprising in the first 10 years under Muawiyah, and all of a sudden Muawiyah dies and then he does an uprising. If you are just an ashiq, you cannot answer this question. You will give a very cliche answer. Oh, the context was different. Oh, context was different. What context? It was the same Bani Umayyah. Yazid, okay, then tell me why Imam Sajjad did not do uprising. Context was different, it was the same Yazid. If you are just an ashiq and you are not an aqil, you cannot rationalize these things for us. You cannot answer these questions. Why did Imam Hussein do uprising? Why did Imam Rida become a, Wali Ahad, for example? We have to become not just an ashiq, but also an aqil. We need to be able to have, for our own selves, reasonable, rational, and in-depth explanations for these things. Now look at what Amir al-Mu'mineen says in Khutbah Shiqshaqiyah. Khutbah is actually not the correct word. I heard from my teacher that this was a mistake Sheikh Saduq made in his thing. He called it a khutbah. It's not a khutbah. Khutbah means there's an audience here. No, Shiqshaqiyah is just 1-2 people. It's a very secretive talk that Amir al-Mu'mineen, sermon number 3, basically, in Nahj al-Balagha. Okay? What does he say? Imam Ali is, all of us have read it, inshallah. He says, now the Khilafah has been taken. He says, I began to think whether I should assault these people or should I endure calmly the blinding darkness of tribulations, okay? Wherein the grown-up are made feeble and the young grow old. And the true believer acts under strain, okay, under pressure, till he meets Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on his deathbed. So I began to think, meaning I'm going to make a decision which is not just emotional. No, I'm going to make a decision that all of my followers are going to be able to understand it and they can act upon it in their own life. The uswatul hasana means you're taking a uswa. You're going to do ta'assi. You're going to follow Amir al-Mu'mineen. So you better have a criteria over here. So he says, and in that situation, I found that sabr, endurance, is a wiser decision to make. It's a more reasonable decision to make. Okay? So this is what Amir al-Mu'mineen says. Look at somebody who is a proponent of the second view, the ashiq view. Look at what they say. It's in Farsi. I forgot to translate it myself. I'll quickly translate it. He says, fiqh and the Sharia did not give any responsibility for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam over here. He could have, done qiyam. He could have, if he wanted, he could have done qiyam. Or he wanted to do shahadat, he went for shahadat. But if he wanted, he could have gone and given bay'ah. And then this person says, didn't Imam Ali do the same thing? Therefore, the entire movement of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was just a harakat ashiqane. It was a love. He was so much in love. He didn't want to do that action. He wanted to get shaheed. Okay? We say to this person, are you telling me Imam Ali is not an ashiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Why only Imam Hussein is an ashiq and Imam Ali is not an ashiq? When you look at the movement like this, you're going to end up telling me, yeah, only Imam Hussein is an ashiq of Allah. Only he wanted to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so intensely. Rest of the Imams, yeah, that's what you're implying at that point. Okay? So this is not a correct view. Over here, when we look at the maqta, we realize that Imam Hussein alayhi salam, multiple places, he is actually telling us the reason why he's doing an uprising. He has a very famous letter to Muawiyah, actually. It's in Rijalul Kashi. And I think, if I'm remembering, it's in one of the Ahlul Sunnah history books as well. I'm not remembering right now. But in Rijalul Kashi, it's a hadith book we have. It's definitely in there. And it's a very long letter. It's been translated into English. You can read it online. It's a very powerful letter. You will be shocked to read it. Sometimes we say Imam Hussein, he was under the sulh of Muawiyah, and maybe he was not interested in doing qiyam. Actually, no. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, even under Muawiyah, he says, if I could, I would fight you as well. He says, if I could, I would fight you. But he is trying to stay true to the sulh that was made. And if you look at Kitabul Irshad of Sheikh Mufid, and when Muawiyah dies, look at what Sheikh Mufid says. He says the period of Hudna is finished, meaning the period of truce. There was a period of truce. He has to stay true to the contract that was made, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Now that the Hudna is finished, the truce is finished, the era of truce is finished, the contract is finished. Now when Yazid is coming, no. You have effectively broken all the articles of the treaty. That was the last thing that was not broken yet. Okay? You have effectively broken all rules of the treaty. We're back to square one. And what was the square one decision? That you will do qiyam. Same with Amir al-Mu'mineen, same with Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and now Imam Hussein alayhi salam is going to do the same thing. So it's actually nothing new. It's a continuation of what was paused for the time being. It was just put on pause because of this sulh. As soon as the sulh ends with Muawiyah, no, we're continuing. So look, it's nothing new. You have to connect it back to where it ended. It was just a temporary thing. So now he starts. And then he starts to list out why it is even more imperative for me to do this qiyam. He says, Yazid is fasiq, he is a fajr, he is this, he is mul'in, he's openly, does these things. And I have to go, and if I give bay'ah right now, this is not going to be good. It's going to justify his, it's going to legitimize his khilafah at this point. And he has no right to be ruling at this point. And then different places he keeps explaining, why I'm going, why am I leaving Medina, why am I leaving Mecca, why even brothers and sisters, even when Muslim bin Aqil is killed, it's a very difficult question. Don't think these are very simple. When he leaves after Muslim is killed, why is he leaving? When you know Khilafah is not going to be given to you. Even Abi Mikhnaf in the Maqtal says, Imam Hussein actually told people to leave. You're not going to get the government. And it says many people left when he was on his way to Kufa, not in Shabi Ashura. On his way to Kufa, many people left. Imam Hussein said, we're not going to get it. So why is he still going? Ulama here have explanation, and they try to give a rational explanation. You must give a rational explanation. If you do not give a rational explanation, then you cannot use this event to tell me what to do in my life. You cannot tell me, Imam Hussein did this, so you must do this as well. You don't even know why he's doing it. You must tell me why is he doing it and give me the criteria so I can use that criteria in my life, day-to-day life today. This is how Islam works. Sometimes I say complicated things, but I'll say something else. In the Hawza, the entire Hawza life is about actually finding the criteria for why we do things. If I were to summarize, what we are doing in Hawza, all we are doing is finding the criteria for why we behave the way we behave. Why am I, for example, coming to the masjid on this, why did I come? I'm so tired. Why am I coming? There has to give me a milak, because you cannot be an inconsistent human. You must have consistency in your life. You cannot say, I'm going to do this, and one day I'll do this, other day I'll do that. Now, what kind of a life is this? You're inconsistent. You're chaotic. Your mind is not consistent. Okay? And that's how people live their lives today. I'm talking about the world outside. Inconsistency. Because why? They have lost meaning in their life. Once meaning is lost, and you think life is meaningless, there are many postmodernist days. This is a view. Albert Camus and these guys who wrote their novels and stuff. They believe life is absurd. It's meaningless. When it's meaningless, your life becomes an inconsistent wreck. And we need to understand, we grow up in this society, and we become so affected by this subconsciously that sometimes it's very difficult to understand we're being affected. And the problem is not that we're being affected. The problem is then we come onto Karbala and we start imposing some of these things that we're picking up from around us. And we think, yeah, it's so obvious Imam Hussein would have done this. Some people make a impression about the Imam in their minds. I say, you have made a fairy tale Imam in your mind. And then it has no wujud khariji. It never existed. This Imam that you have in your mind, this fairy tale that you have made, it was never existed outside. You have just constructed an image based off the world that you're living in, modern world, certain desires that people push in this part of the world especially. This is something that I wanted to discuss tonight. So what I want to conclude with here is that the movement of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is a rational movement. It's a reasonable movement. It can be perceived by the intellect. There is nothing in this movement that is unreasonable. I cannot make sense of this. I don't know what this means. There is nothing in this movement that you can say that about. Every single step you pinpoint till the last day when he's doing dialogue with the army of Ibn Ziyad. You know, up until the last few days, they were doing dialogue. Even on Ashura, they're doing dialogue. Even that, you're going to have to be able to explain it. You can explain that. Why is he doing dialogue? Why is he trying to, when Hur says, you cannot go, why is he saying, okay, just let me go back? We can explain this. Once you can start explaining all of these things, you can now start implementing the message of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, particularly the message of Karbala, the meaning of Karbala in your life in a much more consistent and cohesive manner. Not all over the place and you try to make it into cliche statements. Okay? As I said, we have become a community of cliches. Cliches is when you dumb things down so much. Okay, and it's not good to be in that sort of state. Liberal societies push cliches a lot. Okay, the entire cancel culture is built off of cliches. Okay, there's many books written on this. If you Google these books, cliche culture and liberalism, you will see that our society is built on cliches, and we get affected by that very easily.